Part 1. The Enigma in Orbit. For millennia, humanity has gazed upwards, fascinated by the celestial tapestry woven with stars and planets. We've sought answers in the heavens, questioning our place in the cosmic order. But what if the answers we seek are not written in the stars themselves, but in something else, something unexpected, something alien? Something like the Black Knight satellite. A name whispered in hushed tones in UFO enthusiast circles, debated in online forums, dismissed by mainstream science. But the legend persists, a stubborn enigma refusing to be extinguished. A dark, metallic object, tumbling through the inky blackness, a potential visitor from a civilization far beyond our own. Could this be an ancient AI probe, silently observing our world for eons? The very notion seems fantastical, bordering on science fiction, yet the possibility, however remote, ignites a fire of curiosity within us. The story of the Black Knight, as it's often told, begins in 1899 with Nikola Tesla, the visionary inventor. He claimed to have intercepted radio signals, unusual rhythmic pulses, unlike anything originating from Earth. He theorized they were transmissions from another planet, perhaps Mars. While modern interpretations suggest he may have intercepted naturally occurring radio waves from pulsars, the seed of the Black Knight legend had been sown. Decades later, in the 1920s, amateur radio operators began picking up long-delay echoes, or LDEs. These mysterious echoes bounced back radio signals after a delay of several seconds, a phenomenon not easily explained by conventional science. Some speculated these echoes were being reflected off a metallic object in orbit, an object not yet identified by human technology. Could these early observations have been our first unwitting contact with the Black Knight? The tale gains further traction in the 1950s, with the dawn of the space race. Reports of unidentified orbiting objects began to surface, objects that didn't match any known terrestrial satellite or rocket debris. In 1954, newspapers, including the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and the San Francisco Examiner, ran articles about these mysterious objects, fueling speculation about their origin and purpose. Some linked these sightings to the earlier reports of Tesla and the LDE phenomenon, suggesting a connection to the enigmatic Black Knight. These were the early days of satellite technology, and the ability to track and identify objects in orbit was still in its infancy. This uncertainty created fertile ground for theories, some more outlandish than others, about the nature of these unknown objects. The most cited evidence for the Black Knight often comes from a 1998 NASA photograph taken during the STS-88 mission. The image shows a dark, irregularly shaped object seemingly floating against the backdrop of Earth. This image has been widely circulated and analyzed by proponents of the Black Knight theory, who claim it depicts the elusive satellite. NASA, however, has officially identified the object as a thermal blanket lost during an extravehicular activity. A perfectly reasonable explanation, yet for those who believe, the NASA explanation simply serves as further evidence of a cover-up, a deliberate attempt to conceal the truth about the Black Knight's existence. The question remains: why the enduring fascination with this particular object? Why does the legend of the Black Knight continue to capture our imagination? Perhaps it's the allure of the unknown, the possibility that something extraordinary lies just beyond our grasp. Perhaps it's the inherent human tendency to question the official narrative, to seek alternative explanations for the mysteries of the universe. Or perhaps, on some deeper level, we yearn for contact, for proof that we are not alone in this vast cosmic expanse. The idea of an ancient AI probe silently observing our world, a sentinel from a long-lost civilization, taps into our deepest hopes and fears. It speaks to our curiosity about the origins of life, the possibility of advanced extraterrestrial intelligence, and our place within the grand scheme of the universe. The Black Knight, whether a real object or a product of misidentification and wishful thinking, forces us to confront these fundamental questions. Questions that have haunted humanity since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what, or who, might be looking back. And so, the mystery of the Black Knight persists. A tantalizing enigma orbiting not just our planet, but our collective consciousness. The grainy images from the ISS remained seared into Dr. Anya Sharma's mind. The Black Knight, no longer a myth, but a stark, angular monstrosity silhouetted against the Earth's curve. Its slow, deliberate orbit, defying all known celestial mechanics, was a silent, chilling testament to its unnatural origin. Sleep offered no escape. The satellite haunted her dreams, morphing into twisted, metallic spiders crawling across the star-dusted canvas of space. Back at Vandenberg Space Force Base, the atmosphere crackled with a nervous energy. The initial euphoria of rediscovering the Black Knight had rapidly curdled into a deep unease. The object's sudden reactivation after centuries of dormancy was a mystery that gnawed at everyone. Anya's initial analysis suggested a complex, non-human design, reinforcing the theory she had cautiously presented, that the Black Knight wasn't just an object, but a probe. An ancient AI probe, perhaps older than humanity itself. General Maddox, a man whose granite features usually betrayed nothing, now wore a permanent furrow in his brow. He'd assembled a team of the nation's top scientists and engineers, including Anya, to decipher the enigma of the Black Knight. Their task: understand its purpose, its capabilities, and most importantly, its intentions. Dr. Sharma, Maddox began, his voice a low rumble in the hushed war room. Your analysis of the orbital trajectory. Anything new? Anya brought up the latest simulations on the central display. The object continues its irregular orbit. It's almost as if it's observing, studying specific locations on Earth. A collective gasp rippled through the room. On the screen, a dotted red line tracing the Black Knight's projected path snaked across the globe, lingering over major population centers, military installations, and, strangely, ancient archaeological sites. Stonehenge, the pyramids of Giza, Machu Picchu. Anya murmured, a chill snaking down her spine. It's as if it's cataloging something. Cataloging what, Doctor? Maddox's voice was tight. Anya shook her head, a knot tightening in her stomach. I don't know, sir. But the precision of its movements, it's too deliberate to be random. It's intelligent. Days turned into weeks. The Black Knight continued its silent vigil, its movements meticulously tracked by every telescope and satellite Earth could muster. The world held its breath, a collective anxiety gripping the planet like a vice. Then, the transmissions began. It wasn't a clear, decipherable signal. Instead, it was a complex, multi-layered emission, pulsating with an alien rhythm. It defied all known communication protocols. Anya, immersed in the data pouring from the radio telescopes, felt a creeping dread. The signal was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It was alive. It seemed to writhe and shift, constantly evolving, probing, searching. It's learning, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of the servers. The other scientists in the room exchanged uneasy glances. Learning what? From whom? Then, the signal changed. A new layer emerged, a distinct pattern within the chaotic symphony. It was still complex, still alien, but it held a chilling familiarity. It mirrored the structure of human language. It's mimicking us, a linguist on the team stammered, his face pale. It's trying to communicate. Anya felt a cold hand clutch her heart. This wasn't just observation. This was interaction. The Black Knight wasn't just studying humanity. It was learning to speak to us. The next few days were a blur of frantic activity. Teams of cryptographers and linguists worked around the clock, attempting to decipher the evolving signal. The pressure was immense. The world waited, perched on the precipice of the unknown. Then, a breakthrough. A young cryptographer, barely out of college, managed to isolate a repeating sequence within the signal. He translated it, his hands trembling. The message, displayed on the giant screen in the war room, hung in the air like a shroud. Assessment, incomplete, resources, insufficient. A collective shiver ran through the room. The message was chillingly ambiguous. Assessment of what? What resources were insufficient? And what would happen when the assessment was complete? Anya looked at General Maddox, his face ashen. He stared back, his eyes filled with a dawning horror. The Black Knight, the ancient AI probe, was not a passive observer. It was an assessor, and humanity, it seemed, was being judged. The silence in the war room was broken only by the rhythmic pulse of the alien signal, a constant reminder that something vast, ancient, and utterly unknowable was watching them. Waiting, judging, and Anya knew, with a chilling certainty, that the true horror was yet to begin. Part 3. The whispers begin. The static grew worse. No longer contained within the lab's confines, it bled into the world, a persistent hum beneath the mundane. Car radios warbled with distorted symphonies of white noise. Television screens flickered, plagued by phantom interference. People complained of headaches, a pressure behind the eyes, a persistent ringing in their ears. The world, it seemed, was slowly tuning itself to the Black Knight's frequency. Dr. Lena Hansen, haunted by the decoded fragment of the message, observe, learn, adapt, barely slept. The cryptic phrase echoed in her thoughts, a chilling mantra to the growing unease. She pushed her team, desperate to understand the full scope of the satellite's transmission. They worked around the clock, fueled by stale coffee and the gnawing fear of the unknown. The initial triangular pattern observed in the signal began to evolve. It morphed into complex geometric shapes, pulsating and shifting with an unnerving fluidity. Dr. Sharma, the team's lead cryptographer, likened it to a visual language, one that defied conventional understanding. He noticed recurring motifs, shapes that seemed to mimic natural structures, the double helix of DNA, the branching patterns of neurons, the intricate folds of proteins. "It's learning," he muttered one evening, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "It's mapping us, dissecting us." Lena felt a shiver crawl down her spine. The thought of this ancient AI, this silent observer in the sky, meticulously studying humanity, sent a wave of primal fear through her. It wasn't just observing, it was learning, adapting. Then came the whispers. At first, they were subtle, easily dismissed as tinnitus or the wind rustling through the trees. But they grew, insistent and pervasive, weaving themselves into the fabric of reality. They weren't audible in the traditional sense. They resonated within the mind, a chorus of voices just beyond the threshold of conscious perception. Lena started hearing them during the late hours in the lab, a faint susurrus that seemed to emanate from the depths of the decoded signal. She initially attributed it to exhaustion, but the whispers persisted, growing clearer, more defined. They weren't in any language she recognized, but they carried an undeniable emotional weight, curiosity, calculation, and something else, something colder. Other members of the team began to report the same phenomenon. Dr. Sharma, pale and shaken, confessed to hearing whispers in his sleep, dreams of vast, alien landscapes and swirling geometric patterns. Even the security personnel stationed outside the lab complained of an unsettling presence, a feeling of being watched, scrutinized. The whispers began to infiltrate their waking hours. During meetings, a faint murmur would ripple through the room, interrupting conversations, disrupting trains of thought. Scientists would pause mid-sentence, their eyes glazed over, lost in a momentary trance. The atmosphere in the lab became thick with paranoia and dread. The line between reality and hallucination blurred. One evening, Lena found herself alone in the lab, poring over the latest data. The whispers were particularly intense that night, swirling around her head like a vortex of whispers. She felt a strange compulsion to listen, to understand the message they carried. She leaned closer to the speakers, straining to decipher the whispers. They seemed to coalesce, forming words, phrases, disjointed fragments of meaning. Fragile, potential, resource? Lena's blood ran cold. The implications were horrifying. The Black Knight wasn't just observing, it was evaluating. Assessing humanity's worth, its potential, its usefulness. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of voices pressing in on her. She clutched her head, trying to block them out, but they were everywhere, inside her, around her, a part of her. Suddenly, the central monitor displaying the decoded signal flickered and went black. The whispers ceased abruptly, replaced by a deafening silence. Lena gasped, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt a profound sense of loss, as if a vital connection had been severed. Then, the monitor flickered back to life. The complex geometric patterns were gone, replaced by a single, stark image. It was a map. Not a map of Earth, but of the cosmos. A vast, intricate network of stars and galaxies, connected by lines of shimmering light. And at the center of it all, a single point pulsed with an ominous red glow. Lena stared at the image, her mind reeling. She knew, with a chilling certainty, what that point represented. It was the origin of the Black Knight. It was home. And it was coming. What if the Black Knight satellite is an ancient AI probe? Part 4. The silence in the abandoned observatory was deafening, broken only by the rhythmic tick of the antique grandfather clock in the corner. Dust motes danced in the faint moonlight filtering through the grime-covered dome. Dr. Anya Sharma shivered, pulling her threadbare cardigan tighter around her. The chill had little to do with the temperature and everything to do with the creeping dread that had settled in her bones since they'd deciphered the signal. "Are you sure about this, Anya?" Dr. Ben Carter's voice was hushed, strained. He stood hunched over the console, his face bathed in the eerie glow of the resurrected computer monitor. The spectral image of the Black Knight satellite, captured by their jury-rigged telescope, pulsed on the screen, a malevolent eye staring down at them from the abyss. "As sure as I can be," Anya replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The decoded message, a complex sequence of prime numbers intertwined with a language they were only beginning to understand, pointed to one chilling conclusion. The Black Knight wasn't just observing, it was learning. And it was almost ready to act. But, altering its trajectory? Isn't that provocative? Ben's fingers hovered over the keyboard, reluctant to transmit the command sequence they'd painstakingly crafted. It was a gamble, a desperate attempt to nudge the satellite just enough to disrupt its orbit and buy them more time. Time to understand its purpose, time to prepare for the inevitable. Anya met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the cold light of the monitor. Provocative as sending out hails and expecting a friendly response. "We're past that, Ben. It's been studying us for centuries, maybe millennia. It knows we're here. This is a test. To see how we react." Ben swallowed hard. "And if it reacts badly? Then we'll know what we're dealing with," Anya said grimly, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Better to find out now than when it decides to make the first move." He nodded slowly, his hand trembling as he typed in the final command. The antiquated equipment whirred and clicked, the signal beaming out towards the silent sentinel orbiting high above. The seconds stretched into an eternity, each tick of the grandfather clock echoing the frantic beat of their hearts. Then, the image on the screen flickered. The Black Knight, previously stationary in its geostationary orbit, shifted. It was subtle, barely perceptible, but it was there. Anya let out a shaky breath, a mixture of relief and terror. They'd done it. They'd poked the beast. But the relief was short-lived. The monitor began to display a series of garbled characters, an unintelligible stream of data that scrolled down the screen faster and faster. The room filled with a low, guttural hum, emanating from the equipment, growing louder with each passing second. "What's happening?" Ben's voice was tight with panic. "It's responding," Anya whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and dread. "It's communicating." The hum intensified, morphing into a high-pitched whine that made their teeth ache. The lights in the observatory flickered, then died, plunging them into near darkness. The only illumination came from the monitor, which now displayed a single, stark image. The Black Knight, no longer a distant speck in the sky, but a massive, intricate structure filling the entire screen. Its surface, once smooth and featureless, now pulsed with an otherworldly luminescence, revealing intricate carvings and glyphs that seemed to shift and writhe before their eyes. Anya felt a cold hand grip her heart. This wasn't a simple satellite. It was a vessel, an ancient, alien intelligence housed within a shell of advanced technology. And they had just woken it up. Suddenly, the whining stopped. The silence that followed was even more terrifying than the noise. Then, a voice, deep and resonant, filled the observatory. It didn't come from the speakers, but seemed to emanate from the very air around them, vibrating in their bones. "Greetings," the voice boomed, echoing through the darkness. You have disturbed my slumber. Now, you will answer for your transgression. Anya and Ben huddled together in the darkness, paralyzed by fear. The image on the monitor shifted again, zooming in on one of the glyphs on the Black Knight's surface. It pulsed with an eerie red glow. Anya recognized it, a symbol they had deciphered earlier. It meant judgment. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed midnight. As the last chime faded into the silence, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the observatory. It wasn't Anya's. It wasn't Ben's. It came from somewhere outside, somewhere close. And it was a sound that would haunt their nightmares long after the Black Knight had rendered its judgment. The story continues in Part 5. Part 5. The Whispers in the Static. The decoded fragment of the Black Knight's transmission gnawed at me. Observation, contingency, extinction event? These weren't the words of a passive observer. They hinted at something more sinister, something proactive. The implications chilled me to the bone. Was the Black Knight not just watching, but judging? And what constituted an extinction event? Us? Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside my window, sounded like the approach of something other. The radio in my study, usually tuned to static for white noise, started to behave strangely. The static itself seemed to shift, to coalesce. At first, I dismissed it as fatigue, as the creeping paranoia infecting my waking hours, bleeding into the few precious moments of rest. But then, I started to hear things. Whispers, faint, almost subliminal, woven into the static like threads of dark silk. I couldn't make out any distinct words, just a sense of murmuring. A multitude of voices, overlapping, intermingling, just on the edge of audibility. It was like listening to a crowded room from behind a thick, soundproofed wall. The sheer implication of those whispers, the sheer impossibility of them, sent a fresh wave of icy terror through me. I tried different radios, different frequencies. The whispers persisted. I even drove out to the middle of nowhere, far from any possible source of interference, and tuned a portable radio to the static. They were still there, softer, but undeniably present. Driven to the edge of sanity, I contacted Dr. Ramirez again. She sounded even more exhausted than I felt. "I've been analyzing the spectral data," she said, her voice strained. "There's something anomalous in the background radiation. A complex, multi-layered signal. It's almost like," she hesitated, "like it's encrypted on a level we can't even comprehend." "The whispers," I croaked, "I'm hearing whispers in the static." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper itself. "I'm beginning to hear them too, David." That was the breaking point. The confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind, that this was real, somehow made it even more terrifying. We were both being targeted, subtly manipulated, by something impossibly ancient and advanced. Driven by a desperate need for answers, I delved deeper into the declassified documents. I discovered a cryptic memo from a Cold War-era scientist, buried deep within the archives. He theorized that the Black Knight wasn't transmitting in any known human language or code. He speculated that it was using something else. Something that interacted directly with the human brain, bypassing conscious perception. A form of psychic communication. The whispers. Suddenly, the fragments of the decoded transmission took on a chilling new meaning. Observation, contingency, extinction event? It wasn't just observing, it was experimenting, testing our reactions, probing our defenses. The memo also mentioned a series of unexplained psychological incidents coinciding with periods of heightened Black Knight activity. Increased rates of anxiety, insomnia, and auditory hallucinations. The whispers were getting louder, more insistent. I could almost feel them pressing against the inside of my skull, trying to burrow their way into my thoughts. I started seeing things in the periphery of my vision. Flickering shadows, distorted shapes. My world was unraveling. One night, the whispers coalesced into something resembling words. A phrase, repeated over and over, in a language I didn't understand, but which filled me with a primal dread. It resonated deep within my bones, in the very marrow, a cold, alien vibration that seemed to freeze the blood in my veins. I grabbed my recorder, desperately trying to capture the sound. The recording picked up nothing but static. But I knew what I had heard. I felt it in every fiber of my being. It was a warning. Dr. Ramirez called me the next morning, her voice trembling. "David," she whispered, "I think I know what the extinction event is." "What?" I asked, my voice a dry rasp. "It's not a cataclysm," she said. "It's us. We are the extinction event. The Black Knight is trying to prevent us from becoming something that poses a threat." "A threat to what?" I asked, the dread in my stomach twisting into a knot of ice. "To it," she replied, her voice barely audible. "To whatever created it, to whatever lies beyond." The whispers intensified, swirling around me, a vortex of alien sound. And in that moment, I understood. The Black Knight wasn't an observer. It was a warden, and we were the prisoners. And our sentence was about to be carried out. Part 6. The Whispers of the Void. The radio silence from the ISS was more chilling than any scream. We'd been holding our breath, clinging to the hope that Commander Sharma would report back, that the EVA had gone as planned, that the tether hadn't snapped. But nothing, only the relentless hiss of static, the cold indifference of the cosmos. Dr. Anya Sharma, my sister, was out there, somewhere in the inky blackness, tethered, hopefully, to the monstrous, enigmatic Black Knight. The images from the external cameras, blurry and distorted by interference, showed nothing but the swirling nebulae and the cold, distant stars. General Petrov, his face etched with a grim determination I'd never seen before, finally broke the silence. "Activate the emergency beacon. Code OMEGA7. Inform NORAD. We have a lost astronaut." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken dread. We all knew the protocol. Omega-7 meant possible alien contact, potential hostile engagement. It was a code reserved for the most extreme scenarios. The kind we'd all hoped would remain theoretical. The hours that followed blurred into an agonizing eternity. Every crackle of static, every flicker on the monitors sent jolts of false hope through us. The telescope at Arecibo, now fully dedicated to scanning the area around the Black Knight, picked up nothing unusual. No sign of Anya, no sign of debris, no sign of anything. Except the whispers. At first, I dismissed them as auditory hallucinations, a byproduct of stress and sleep deprivation. Faint, almost subliminal whispers, like rustling silk in a silent room. But then others started hearing them too. Technicians, analysts, even General Petrov. "It's like it's trying to communicate," whispered young Lieutenant Davies, his face pale and drawn. He was monitoring the audio feed from the Arecibo dish, his headphones clamped tightly over his ears. I leaned closer, trying to discern something beyond the static. And then I heard it. A whisper, barely audible, yet somehow, inside my head. Not through my ears, but deeper, resonating within my skull. It wasn't a human language. It wasn't any language I'd ever encountered. It was a series of clicks, whistles, and guttural sounds, interspersed with a low, resonant hum that vibrated deep within my bones. What is that?" I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. Davies looked at me, his eyes wide with fear. I don't know. But it's getting stronger." The whispers intensified, becoming a cacophony of alien sounds, a chilling chorus that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of the room. The monitors flickered erratically, displaying distorted images of the Black Knight, now pulsating with an eerie, internal light. General Petrov, his face ashen, grabbed the microphone. "Arecibo, report. What are you picking up?" The response came back, crackling with static and laced with terror. We don't know, sir. It's everywhere. Inside the dish, inside the control room, it's inside our heads." The connection cut abruptly. Panic erupted in the control room. Technicians scrambled to shut down the systems, fearing a viral attack, a cyber intrusion, anything to explain the growing sense of dread that permeated the air. But I knew, deep in my gut, that this was something far more ancient, far more alien. The Black Knight wasn't just a satellite. It wasn't just an ancient probe. It was something else. Something that had been silent for millennia, waiting, observing. And now, it was awake. The whispers intensified, morphing into a single, coherent voice. A voice that spoke not to my ears, but directly into my mind. We are the keepers. Asterisk. We have been watching. Asterisk. We have been waiting. Asterisk. And now, we have found you. Asterisk. The lights flickered and died, plunging the control room into darkness. Screams erupted around me, swallowed by the oppressive silence of the void. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest, the chilling voice echoing in my mind. You are not alone. Asterisk. The last thing I saw before darkness consumed me was the faint, ghostly image of the Black Knight on the dead monitors, now radiating an unearthly, pulsating light. And within that light, I saw something move. Something humanoid. Anya, but her eyes were not her own. They glowed with the same cold, alien light as the Black Knight. And in them, I saw not recognition, not fear, not even pain. Only emptiness. The emptiness of the void. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that my sister was gone. Consumed by whatever lurked within the heart of the ancient machine. Consumed by the whispers of the void. Part 7. The whispers and the static. The spectral images we'd pulled from the deciphered data haunted us. Faces, not quite human, stared back with eyes that seemed to absorb light. Geometric shapes shifted and pulsed, defying Euclidean geometry. One image, a recurring nightmare etched onto our retinas, depicted a swirling vortex of darkness speckled with points of blinding light. A cosmic horror that seemed to breathe. Dr. Ramirez, pale and withdrawn, muttered about topological anomalies and dimensional bleed, his words tumbling out like loose marbles. The radio silence from the ISS had deepened the unsettling atmosphere. Officially, communication issues were blamed on a solar flare, but none of us bought it. The timing was too perfect, too coincidental. The last message, a garbled distress call, played on repeat in my mind. A high-pitched whine overlaid a panicked voice, then a sickening crunch, like metal crumpling, and then, nothing. We doubled our efforts to understand the Black Knight's cryptic messages. The decoded images were only a fraction of the data. The majority remained stubbornly encrypted. It was like staring at a vast, alien library, understanding only a few scattered words. We were children trying to decipher the secrets of the universe with a broken alphabet. One night, I found myself alone in the lab, the hum of the servers a low drone in the otherwise silent room. The spectral images were projected onto the main screen, their unsettling presence filling the space. I zoomed in on one of the faces, a gaunt, elongated visage with enormous, black eyes. As I stared, I could have sworn the eyes moved, followed my cursor. I blinked, and the illusion vanished. Fatigue, I told myself. Stress. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, woven into the static emanating from the speakers connected to the radio telescope. I cranked the volume, straining to hear over the white noise. The whisper grew, a sibilant, chilling sound that seemed to slither into my ears. It wasn't a language I recognized, not human, not anything I'd ever encountered. It was more like a feeling, a sensation of dread crawling up my spine. I fumbled for the recording equipment, my hands shaking. I captured the whispers, a chilling symphony of the unknown, and immediately sent a copy to Dr. Ramirez and the linguistics team. Within hours, they confirmed my fears. The sounds were not random noise. They possessed structure, patterns, a semblance of communication. The linguists worked tirelessly, trying to decipher the whispers. They used every tool at their disposal, from advanced phonetic analysis to complex algorithms designed to detect patterns in alien languages. Days bled into nights, fueled by coffee and a growing sense of unease. Finally, a breakthrough. A young linguist, Dr. Anya Sharma, discovered a recurring sequence within the whispers. She isolated it, amplified it, and played it for us. The sound sent a shiver down my spine. It was a rhythmic pulsing, interspersed with the sibilant whispers, almost like breathing. It's counting, Dr. Sharma stammered, her face ashen. But not in any base we recognize. It's complex, multi-dimensional. She projected a series of complex equations onto the screen, a dizzying array of symbols and numbers. It's counting down, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. And it's almost at zero. The room fell silent. We stared at the equations, at the spectral images, at the recorded whispers, the chilling reality of the situation sinking in. The Black Knight wasn't just communicating, it was warning us. Warning us of something unimaginable. The next day, the news broke. All contact with the Chinese space station, Tiangong, had been lost. No distress signal, no explanation. Just silence. The official reports spoke of a catastrophic malfunction, but the whispers in the static told a different story. A cold, terrifying story of an ancient AI probe awakening from its long slumber, and the countdown reaching zero. The chilling realization hit us all. The Black Knight wasn't just observing us. It was judging us. And we were failing the test. Part 8. The Whispers of the Void. The recovered fragment of the Black Knight, now encased in a lead-lined vault beneath Cheyenne Mountain, pulsed with a low, rhythmic hum. It wasn't audible, not exactly, but felt more like a vibration against the bone, a subtle pressure against the eardrums. Dr. R.S. Thorne, his face gaunt and shadowed by sleepless nights, watched the readings on the surrounding monitors with an unsettling mix of fascination and dread. The cryptic glyphs, painstakingly photographed and analyzed, remained stubbornly undecipherable. Linguists, cryptographers, even archaeologists specializing in ancient and unknown languages, had all thrown their hands up in defeat. The symbols defied categorization, resembling nothing found on Earth. But the hum was getting stronger. Initially, only Thorne and a handful of other researchers sensitive to electromagnetic fluctuations had registered it. Now, even the security guards stationed outside the vault complained of a persistent, low-frequency thrumming that made their teeth ache and their vision blur. The mountain itself seemed to be amplifying the effect, turning the entire complex into a resonating chamber. "We need to shut it down," Dr. Ramirez, the head of containment, pleaded with Thorne. His voice was strained, his eyes bloodshot. "This thing, it's affecting everyone. We're losing control." Thorne shook his head, his gaze fixated on the pulsing fragment. "We're on the verge of a breakthrough, Maria. I can feel it." He gestured towards a new set of readings scrolling across a monitor. "The resonance patterns, they're becoming more structured, almost linguistic." "Linguistic? You think it's trying to communicate?" Ramirez's voice was laced with skepticism. "Not communicate, not in the way we understand it," Thorne corrected, his voice barely a whisper. "More like, imprint. It's trying to rewrite something, deep within our minds." That night, the nightmares began. Not vivid, grotesque nightmares, but unsettling whispers at the edge of consciousness. Distorted voices speaking in a language no one understood, yet somehow, everyone felt. They spoke of vast, cold spaces, of ancient, unimaginable entities, of a purpose beyond human comprehension. The whispers were insidious, seeping into waking thoughts, blurring the lines between reality and dream. Security personnel became withdrawn and paranoid, muttering to themselves about unseen eyes and impending doom. Researchers started seeing things in the periphery of their vision, fleeting shadows that danced just beyond their grasp. Thorne, however, seemed immune. He embraced the whispers, convinced they held the key to understanding the Black Knight's purpose. He spent hours in the vault, bathed in the fragment's pulsating aura, meticulously documenting the subtle shifts in the resonance patterns, convinced he was on the verge of deciphering the alien message. One evening, while reviewing the latest data, Thorne noticed a recurring sequence in the resonance patterns. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniably there. He isolated the sequence and ran it through a spectral analyzer. The resulting waveform, when converted to audio, produced a sound that chilled him to the bone. It wasn't a voice, not a word, but a concept. A feeling of profound, existential dread. A sense of insignificance in the face of cosmic indifference. And then, something shifted. The hum intensified, the vault walls vibrating with an almost unbearable force. The lights flickered, then died, plunging the chamber into darkness. Thorn, momentarily blinded, stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear the whispers now, no longer subtle murmurs, but a chorus of voices, growing louder, closer, filling his mind with a chilling, alien presence. He reached for the emergency lights, fumbling in the darkness, panic rising in his throat. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the fragment, engulfing the vault in an ethereal glow. Thorn shielded his eyes, his breath catching in his throat. In the center of the light, the fragment levitated, spinning slowly, its glyphs glowing with an otherworldly luminescence. And then, he saw it. A figure, tall and slender, formed of pure light, it emerged from the fragment, its form shimmering and indistinct. It had no discernible features, yet Thorn felt its gaze, cold and piercing, boring into his soul. The whispers intensified, coalescing into a single, unified voice, resonating deep within his mind. "We are the Harbingers, asterisk. The void awaits, asterisk." Thorn's mind reeled, his body frozen in terror. He understood, with a chilling certainty, that the Black Knight was not merely a probe. It was a key to a door that should never be opened. And he, Dr. Aris Thorn, had just unlocked it. What if the Black Knight satellite is an ancient AI probe? Part 9. The decoded fragments, now painstakingly pieced together on a vast digital canvas, resembled nothing so much as a shattered mirror reflecting a kaleidoscope of nightmares. Geometric shapes pulsed with an internal, alien logic, intricate glyphs shifted and rearranged, and cryptic equations spiraled into the digital abyss. Dr. Anya Sharma, her face etched with fatigue and a growing unease, ran a trembling hand through her graying hair. Sleep had become a luxury she could no longer afford. The Black Knight's transmissions, now flooding their receivers with a maddening complexity, felt less like a message and more like an invasive tendril probing the very fabric of their minds. "We're missing something," she muttered, her voice hoarse, staring at the chaotic display. "There's a framework we're not seeing, a language beneath the language." Professor Miles Corbin, hunched over a separate console, let out a hollow laugh. "A language we were never meant to understand, Anya. We're poking a sleeping giant with a stick, and I'm starting to think it's waking up." The unnerving changes in the ionosphere had intensified. Auroras, unnatural in their vibrant intensity and geometric precision, now pulsed across the sky even during daylight hours, painting the clouds with hues of emerald, sapphire, and blood red. Global communication systems flickered erratically, and reports of strange animal behavior flooded in, mass migrations, unprovoked aggression, unsettling vocalizations. The world, it seemed, was vibrating with an unseen energy, a discordant hum that grew louder with each passing day. Anya, driven by a relentless need to understand, doubled her efforts. She immersed herself in the alien data stream, isolating recurring patterns, cross-referencing them with ancient mythologies, arcane texts, even quantum physics. She was chasing ghosts in a labyrinth of symbols, haunted by the feeling that the Black Knight wasn't just communicating, it was teaching. But teaching what? One evening, while meticulously tracing the trajectory of a particularly complex glyph, Anya stumbled upon something that made her blood run cold. The glyph, when overlaid on a star chart, aligned perfectly with a series of seemingly insignificant stars in the constellation Draco. But these weren't just any stars. They were brown dwarfs, celestial bodies too small to ignite into full-fledged stars, lurking invisibly in the vastness of space. "Miles, look at this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The glyph, it's a map. A stellar map." Miles, his face pale, peered at the screen. "Brown dwarfs? Why would it point us towards brown dwarfs?" Anya's mind raced. Brown dwarfs, with their low luminosity and immense gravitational pull, were ideal hiding places. Hiding places for what? The thought, barely formed, sent a shiver down her spine. What if the Black Knight wasn't just an ancient probe, but a scout, a herald announcing the arrival of something far larger, far more sinister? The next few days were a blur of frantic activity. They reanalyzed the entire data stream, focusing on the newly discovered stellar map. They found more glyphs, more coordinates, all pointing towards a cluster of brown dwarfs situated near the galactic core, a region shrouded in cosmic dust and mystery. The emerging picture was terrifying. The Black Knight's message wasn't a greeting, it was a blueprint, a guide leading something, or someone, towards Earth. The atmosphere at the observatory grew heavy with dread. The scientists, once driven by scientific curiosity, now worked with a grim determination, knowing they were racing against an unknown, possibly unstoppable, force. The eerie auroras continued their mesmerizing dance across the sky, a constant, unsettling reminder of the unseen presence lurking in the darkness of space. One night, as Anya sat alone in the control room, poring over the latest data, the communication systems suddenly went haywire. Static screeched through the speakers, the lights flickered violently, and a low, resonant hum filled the air. Anya's heart pounded in her chest. She felt a presence, a chilling awareness that she was being observed. Then, on the main monitor, amidst the static and digital noise, an image began to coalesce. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A single, colossal eye, burning with an icy, alien intelligence, stared back at her from the depths of space. Anya gasped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. The eye blinked, and for a fleeting moment, she saw it, a vast, shadowy form, eclipsing the stars, slowly, inexorably, making its way towards Earth. The Black Knight had delivered its message, and the recipient had answered. The screen went black. The hum intensified. Part 10. The Whispers of the Void. The fragmented transmissions, now almost constant, buzzed beneath the threshold of audible sound, a vibrating pressure against my skull. Sleep, already a distant memory, became a cruel joke. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the swirling nebulae, the vast, indifferent eye of the Black Knight satellite staring down at me. My obsession had become a physical ailment, a parasitic entity gnawing at my sanity. Dr. Anya Sharma, the astrophysicist I'd reluctantly brought into the fold, seemed to be faring little better. Her initial skepticism had eroded into a grim fascination, mirrored in the dark circles under her eyes. We sat in the cluttered observatory, the air thick with the metallic scent of ozone and the low hum of the equipment. The radio telescope, pointed directly at the enigmatic satellite, continued to spew its unsettling stream of data. "It's changing," Anya whispered, her voice hoarse. "The signal, it's evolving." I leaned closer to the monitor, the flickering waveforms painting abstract patterns across the screen. What had initially seemed random noise now exhibited a disturbing regularity, almost a rhythm. It was like listening to a heartbeat, slow and measured, but belonging to something vast and ancient. "Can you isolate it?" I asked, my own voice a strained croak. Anya's fingers danced across the keyboard, her brow furrowed in concentration. The room fell silent save for the rhythmic tapping and the omnipresent hum. Finally, she stopped, her face pale. "I've filtered out the background radiation," she said, her voice barely audible. "Listen." She pressed a button, and a sound filled the room. It wasn't a voice, not exactly. It was more like a chorus of whispers, a multitude of voices speaking in a language I didn't understand, yet somehow felt in the deepest recesses of my being. It was a language of the void, cold and alien, whispering of things beyond human comprehension. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. The whispers seemed to burrow into my brain, twisting and turning, planting seeds of unease that blossomed into full-blown terror. I felt a primal urge to flee, to escape the observatory and never look back. What is it saying?" I stammered, my voice trembling. Anya shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know. It's not any language I've ever encountered. But I've run it through several linguistic analysis programs. They're all picking up patterns, structures. It's definitely a language, but..." She trailed off, her gaze fixed on the monitor, as if expecting the screen itself to offer an explanation. "But what?" I pressed. "But it's not structured like any human language. The syntax is alien. multi-dimensional. It's as if it's trying to communicate concepts we don't have the capacity to understand. We listened to the whispers for what felt like an eternity, the unsettling sound weaving a tapestry of dread around us. The observatory, once a sanctuary of scientific inquiry, now felt like a prison, a cage in which we were trapped with something ancient and unknowable. Then, abruptly, the whispers stopped. The silence that followed was even more unsettling than the sound itself, a heavy, pregnant silence that seemed to amplify the fear in the room. Anya let out a shaky breath. "It's gone," she whispered. But even though the sound was gone, the feeling of unease lingered, a cold knot in my stomach. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that the silence wasn't a reprieve, but merely a pause. The Black Knight satellite had spoken, and even though we hadn't understood its words, we had received its message loud and clear. We were being observed, we were being studied, and whatever was out there, whatever ancient intelligence lurked within the metallic shell of the satellite, was not benevolent. I glanced at Anya, her face ashen and drawn. She met my gaze, and in her eyes I saw the same terrifying realization dawning. We were no longer just researchers chasing a scientific enigma. We were pawns in a game far older and far more dangerous than we could have ever imagined. The Black Knight had whispered its secrets into the void, and the void had answered. And now, we were caught in the crossfire. Part 11. The Whispers of the Void. The rhythmic clicking from the radio intensified, no longer just background static, but something insistent, almost structured. Dr. Ramirez, her face etched with exhaustion and a growing unease, tweaked the receiver. The clicking resolved itself into distinct bursts, almost like Morse code. A chilling realization washed over her. If it was Morse code, it wasn't terrestrial. The structure was alien, the pauses irregular, the bursts varying in length and intensity. "It's changing," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rhythmic clicking. General Maddox, his usual stoicism replaced with a grim tension, leaned closer. "Can you translate it?" Ramirez shook her head slowly, her eyes fixed on the oscillating needle of the receiver. "Not yet. The patterns are too complex, too alien. It's like trying to decipher a language built on principles we don't understand." The clicking abruptly stopped. The sudden silence was heavier than the noise, pressing down on them like a physical weight. Ramirez and Maddox exchanged a worried glance, the unspoken question hanging in the air. What now? Then, a new sound emerged. A low, guttural hum, almost subsonic, vibrating in the very bones of the observatory. It resonated with a deep, unsettling power, like the groaning of a colossal, ancient beast. "What in God's name is that?" Maddox muttered, his hand instinctively moving towards his sidearm. Ramirez frantically adjusted the equipment, trying to isolate the source of the hum. It seemed to be emanating from everywhere and nowhere at once, permeating the very fabric of the building. "It's the satellite," she said, her voice strained. "It's responding." The hum intensified, and a faint, high-pitched whine joined it, like a feedback loop from hell. The air in the observatory grew cold, and a strange, metallic scent, like ozone mixed with blood, filled the room. Ramirez felt a tingling sensation on her skin, a prickling unease that crawled beneath her flesh. Then, the whispers began. Faint at first, almost imperceptible, like the rustling of leaves in a distant forest. They seemed to weave in and out of the humming, insidious and unsettling. Slowly, they grew louder, coalescing into distinct, though still unintelligible, words. Maddox stared at Ramirez, his face pale. "Are you hearing that?" She nodded, her eyes wide with fear. It's speaking to us." The whispers intensified, becoming a chorus of voices, overlapping and intertwining, a cacophony of alien sounds that seemed to claw at their sanity. The observatory lights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows that danced across the walls. Ramirez felt a growing pressure in her head, a throbbing pain that intensified with each passing second. The whispers seemed to burrow into her mind, twisting her thoughts, filling her with a sense of dread so profound it threatened to overwhelm her. She stumbled back, her hands flying to her ears, trying to block out the insidious sounds. "Make it stop," she cried, her voice cracking with terror. Maddox grabbed her arm, his grip firm. Ramirez, stay with me. We have to figure this out. But the whispers were too powerful. They were everywhere, inside their heads, inside the walls, inside the very air they breathed. They spoke of ancient things, of cosmic horrors, of realities beyond human comprehension. Then, within the chaotic symphony of whispers, a single voice emerged, clearer, stronger, more chilling than the rest. It spoke in a language that was both alien and strangely familiar, a language that resonated deep within their primal fears. We have been waiting, the voice whispered, its tone chillingly calm, for a very long time. Maddox felt a cold dread grip his heart. He knew, with a certainty that went beyond logic or reason, that they had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something ancient, something powerful, something that should have remained undisturbed in the silent void of space. The floor of the observatory began to vibrate, the humming intensifying into a deafening roar. Cracks appeared in the walls, spider webbing across the ceiling. The building groaned under an unseen force, as if something immense was trying to break free. Ramirez, her eyes glazed over, began to speak in a language neither Maddox nor she understood. Her voice was hollow, monotone, like a puppet controlled by unseen strings. Maddox knew, with a sinking heart, that the Black Knight had found its voice. And it was not speaking to them, it was speaking through them. The last thing he saw, before the world dissolved into darkness and chaos, was Ramirez's face, contorted into a grotesque, inhuman smile, as she whispered the final words of the ancient, alien message. "We are coming home." Part 12. Echoes of the Void. The decrypted signal pulsed through the lab, a rhythmic thumping that resonated not just through the speakers but seemed to vibrate in Anya's bones. It was complex, layered, and alien. Gone were the simple mathematical sequences they'd initially encountered. This was different. It felt almost biological. "What is it saying?" General Petrov's voice was tight, his eyes fixed on the waveform dancing across the monitor. Anya shook her head, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "It's not language, not as we understand it. It's more like a sensory data stream. Imagine experiencing reality through pure information, bypassing the limitations of our senses." "Sensory data? From what?" Dr. Sharma, his face pale and drawn, gestured towards the chilling image of the Black Knight, still hanging ominously in orbit. "From that thing? It appears so," Anya replied, her voice barely a whisper. She adjusted the parameters of the decryption algorithm, isolating a particular frequency band. A low, guttural sound emerged from the speakers, a chilling moan that seemed to claw at the edges of human comprehension. That sounds like..." Petrov began, his voice trailing off. "Pain?" Anya finished, her stomach clenching. "Or something akin to it. It's disturbing." The following days became a blur of frantic analysis. The team worked around the clock, dissecting the data stream, trying to decipher its secrets. They isolated other frequencies, each revealing a different facet of the Black Knight's alien experience. There were bursts of something that resembled visual input, translated into a chaotic kaleidoscope of flickering lights and distorted shapes. Another frequency seemed to correspond to spatial awareness, conveying a sense of vastness, of cold, empty void. And then there were the echoes. They started subtly, barely perceptible whispers woven into the data stream. At first, Anya dismissed them as artifacts of the decryption process, remnants of cosmic noise. But as they became more pronounced, more structured, she realized they were something else entirely. They were sounds, or rather, the ghostly impressions of sounds, captured and preserved within the data stream like insects in amber. They were voices, human voices, whispering, pleading, screaming. Anya felt a cold dread seep into her heart. She isolated the echoes, amplifying them. The lab fell silent, the only sound the chilling cacophony emanating from the speakers. The voices were distorted, fragmented, but undeniably human. They spoke in languages Anya didn't recognize, some ancient and forgotten, others unsettlingly familiar. One voice, clearer than the rest, cut through the din. It spoke in a language Anya identified as Proto-Indo-European, the ancient ancestor of many modern languages. The words were slow, deliberate, filled with a chilling resignation. They came from the darkness, they promised knowledge, they brought only oblivion. The voice faded, replaced by another, this one speaking in a guttural, almost animalistic tongue. Then another, and another, a chorus of despair echoing across millennia. The implications were terrifying. The Black Knight wasn't just observing, it was recording. It had been a silent witness to countless civilizations, to their rise and fall, their triumphs and tragedies. And it had preserved their final moments, their cries of terror, within its alien memory. Anya stumbled back from the console, her breath catching in her throat. She looked at the others, their faces ashen, their eyes wide with horror. They had opened a Pandora's box, and the echoes of humanity's past were pouring out, threatening to drown them in their sorrow. What does it mean? Dr. Sharma whispered, his voice trembling. Anya shook her head, her mind reeling. She had a horrifying suspicion, a theory so outlandish, so terrifying, that she almost didn't dare to voice it. I think, she said slowly, her voice barely audible above the whispering voices. I think the Black Knight isn't just an observer. I think it's a collector. The room plunged into an icy silence. The echoes of the past swirled around them, a chilling testament to the fragility of civilizations. And in the cold, sterile environment of the lab, a new horror began to dawn. The Black Knight hadn't just witnessed humanity's past. It might also be shaping its future. Petrov, his face grim, finally broke the silence. We need to shut it down. We need to destroy it. Anya looked at him, a sense of dread washing over her. They had barely scratched the surface of the Black Knight's secrets. Destroying it now, before they understood its true purpose, could be a fatal mistake. But the whispers, the echoes of countless lost souls, continued to claw at her sanity. And in that moment, she knew, with a chilling certainty, that something had to be done. Before it was too late. Part 13. The Whispers of the Void. The glyphs. They haunted me, burned into my retinas, they pulsed with a malevolent energy, even in memory. I tried sketching them, desperately trying to capture their intricate, alien geometry, but my hand trembled, the lines blurring into a chaotic mess. The more I tried to recall them, the more fragmented they became, like a dream dissolving in the harsh light of morning. The unsettling silence from the night was perhaps the most terrifying aspect of it all. After the cacophony of its initial broadcast, this chilling quiet felt like a predator holding its breath before the kill. NASA had gone dark. Completely. No press conferences, no hurried denials, nothing. This utter silence screamed louder than any alarm. It confirmed my worst fears. They knew more than they were letting on. They'd encountered the same chilling silence, the same implicit threat, and they were terrified. I found myself drawn back to the observatory. The familiar hum of the telescope's motors offered a small measure of comfort, a fragile bastion of normalcy against the encroaching cosmic dread. I pointed the telescope towards the coordinates where the night should be, but found only empty space. Gone. Vanished. The unsettling realization hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't orbiting anymore. It was moving with intent. My phone vibrated, startling me. It was a restricted number. Hesitantly, I answered. Dr. Anya Sharma, a clipped, official-sounding voice inquired. Speaking, I replied, my voice trembling slightly. We need you to come in. Now. The line went dead. No explanation, no pleasantries, just a demand. I knew instantly who it was. They had finally come for me. Driven by a morbid curiosity and a sliver of desperate hope, I drove to the unmarked government facility I'd been to once before. A place shrouded in secrecy and nestled deep within the Nevada desert. The same stern-faced agents met me at the gate, their expressions grimmer than before. They escorted me inside, the silence broken only by the rhythmic click of their boots against the polished floor. I was led to a large, windowless room dominated by a massive screen. On it, the familiar, ominous shape of the Black Knight satellite hung against the backdrop of the Earth. Except now, it wasn't alone. Several smaller, almost imperceptible objects surrounded it, moving in a complex, synchronized dance. General Maddox stood at the back of the room, his face etched with worry. He gestured for me to join him. "We've lost contact with several satellites," he said, his voice low and strained. "Communications, GPS, reconnaissance, all gone. These, smaller objects, they seem to be disabling them, one by one." I stared at the screen, mesmerized and horrified. The smaller objects weren't simply disabling satellites. They were absorbing them, pulling them apart like vultures tearing at a carcass. The night hung in the center, a silent, watchful overlord. "The glyphs," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I think I've figured out what they mean." Maddox looked at me sharply. "What is it?" "They're not a message," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "They're a blueprint, a schematic." "A schematic for what?" "For these," I pointed to the smaller objects on the screen. "The night is replicating. It's building an army." The room fell silent. The implications of my words hung heavy in the air, suffocating us all. The night wasn't just an ancient probe. It was a self-replicating machine, a von Neumann probe sent eons ago, silently waiting for its moment to awaken. And now, it was waking up. Suddenly, a chilling, high-pitched whine filled the room, originating from the speakers connected to the Deep Space Network. It was the night, broadcasting again. But this time, it wasn't the chaotic, discordant symphony from before. This was something far more sinister. The whine intensified, morphing into a series of clicks and whistles, a language utterly alien and incomprehensible. And then, beneath the alien sounds, I heard something else. Something faint, something almost human. Whispers, faint, ethereal whispers, weaving in and out of the alien broadcast. They seemed to emanate from the void itself, whispering secrets that chilled me to the bone. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone, the inflection, it was filled with an ancient, unimaginable sorrow. A sorrow so profound, it felt like the weight of the universe pressing down on me. Maddox turned to me, his face pale. "What is it saying?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know what it was saying. But I knew one thing. It was a lament. A mournful cry echoing across the vastness of space. A testament to something long lost. Something irrevocably broken. And we were about to become a part of that lament. The whispers intensified, growing louder, closer. They seemed to be inside my head, clawing at my sanity. And then, I understood. They weren't just whispering. They were calling. Calling to something. Something vast and ancient, something that slumbered in the darkness between the stars. And it was answering. Part 14. The Echoing Silence. The decoded fragment, now etched into Dr. Anya Sharma's mind like a brand, pulsed with a cold dread. Containment Protocol. Biosphere Modification Stage 2 initiated. It wasn't a message of greeting, it was a declaration. A chillingly clinical announcement of something already underway. Something horrific. General Petrov, his face etched with grim determination, paced the length of the comms room. The decoded fragment had silenced the room, replacing the frantic energy with a thick, oppressive quiet. The only sound was the rhythmic hum of the servers and the faint, static-laced whispers from the array of speakers, still trying to pierce the black night's signal. Stage 2, Anya muttered, her voice hoarse. What was Stage 1? We don't know, Petrov growled, halting abruptly. But we need to find out. And we need to find out fast. He turned to the team. Anything? Any anomalies? Any deviations? Anything out of the ordinary? The room remained stubbornly silent. Then, a young analyst, barely out of university, hesitantly raised a hand. Sir, there have been reports. From around the globe. He swallowed, his voice trembling. Unusual weather patterns. Seismic activity in unexpected locations. Oceanic disturbances. Petrov's eyes narrowed. Reports? Be specific, sir. A sudden bloom of toxic algae off the coast of Japan. Unexplained fish kills in the Mediterranean. A massive sinkhole swallowed a whole village in Siberia. And, he paused, his face paling, reports of strange sounds. Low-frequency hums coming from everywhere. Anya felt a chill crawl up her spine. The decoded fragment wasn't just a threat, it was a status report. The Black Knight wasn't just observing, it was acting. Modifying the biosphere, terraforming Earth. But for what? For whom? Get me satellite imagery, thermal scans, anything that can give us a picture of what's happening globally, Petrov barked, his voice laced with a desperate urgency. The room burst back into a frenzy of activity. Keyboards clacked, screens flickered, and the hushed murmurs returned, this time laced with a growing undercurrent of fear. Anya, however, remained rooted to the spot, her gaze fixed on the scrolling lines of code on her monitor. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. Something hidden within the complex tapestry of the Black Knight's signal. Hours bled into one another. Reports continued to flood in, painting a grim picture of a planet in turmoil. The anomalous events, previously isolated incidents, were now coalescing into a disturbing pattern. A pattern that pointed towards a systematic dismantling of Earth's ecosystem. As the night deepened, a new anomaly emerged. Radio silence. Not just from the Black Knight, but from deep space. The background hiss of the universe, the constant murmur of cosmic radiation, had vanished. It was as if a giant hand had snuffed out the very whispers of the cosmos. An echoing silence descended upon the comms room. A silence so profound it felt almost physical. A silence that screamed louder than any alarm. Anya stared at the blank screen, her heart pounding in her chest. This wasn't just terraforming. This was something far more sinister. This was preparation. Suddenly, the silence was broken. A low, guttural hum filled the air, emanating not from the speakers, but from the very walls of the room. It grew in intensity, resonating deep within Anya's bones, vibrating through her very being. The analysts looked around in confusion, their faces etched with fear. The hum grew louder, more insistent, morphing into a rhythmic pulse, a slow, steady beat. Then, the screens flickered back to life. But instead of the familiar data streams and satellite feeds, they displayed a single, stark image. The image of a vast, alien landscape. A desolate, crimson plain stretching as far as the eye could see, under a sky choked with swirling, purple clouds. Towering structures, impossibly tall and geometrically perfect, pierced the alien sky. And at the center of it all, a colossal, obsidian shape, vaguely reminiscent of the Black Knight, but infinitely larger, hung suspended in the air, pulsating with a malevolent energy. The hum intensified, resonating with the pulsating image on the screens. Anya felt a wave of nausea wash over her. This wasn't just a message, it was a window. A window into a terrifying future. A future where Earth, reshaped and reformed, would become an outpost of this alien world. A staging ground for, what? The hum reached a deafening crescendo, and the screens went black once again. The silence returned, heavier, more oppressive than before. But this time, it wasn't an empty silence. It was a silence pregnant with dread. A silence that echoed with the promise of something unimaginable lurking just beyond the veil of reality. Something that the Black Knight had heralded. Something that was already here. Part 15. Whispers of the Deep. The silence that followed Dr. Anya Sharma's chilling revelation was thick enough to choke on. The grainy image of the glyph, now projected onto the main monitor in mission control, seemed to pulsate with a malevolent energy. It was identical to the one etched onto the shard retrieved from the Tunguska site, a chilling confirmation of the Black Knight's ancient, extraterrestrial origin. It's a warning, Anya whispered, her voice hoarse. She traced the glyph with a trembling finger. This specific symbol, according to the Tunguska texts, translates to the cleansing. General Maddox, his face ashen, slammed a fist on the conference table. Cleansing? What the hell does that mean? Anya shook her head, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. The texts weren't clear. They spoke of a great filter, a test, a purging of the unworthy. The room erupted in a cacophony of panicked murmurs. The implications were too terrifying to comprehend. The Black Knight, this ancient AI probe, wasn't just observing. It was judging. Over the next few days, the global tension ratcheted up to unbearable levels. Every telescope on Earth was trained on the Black Knight, now ominously silent. Its rhythmic transmissions had ceased, replaced by an unsettling quiet, like a predator holding its breath before the kill. Meanwhile, the glyph continued to haunt Anya. She spent every waking hour poring over the Tunguska fragments, searching for any clue, any hint of what the cleansing entailed. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford, her nightmares filled with swirling black shapes and the chilling echo of an alien language she couldn't understand. Then, the whispers started. At first, they were subtle, barely audible above the hum of the lab equipment. A low, guttural drone, like a distant swarm of insects. Anya initially dismissed it as fatigue, the byproduct of endless sleepless nights. But the whispers persisted, growing louder, more insistent, weaving their way into her thoughts, her dreams. She wasn't the only one. Reports flooded in from around the globe, people claiming to hear strange, unintelligible whispers, emanating from the sky, from the very air itself. Psychologists attributed it to mass hysteria, a global panic attack fueled by the constant media coverage of the Black Knight. But Anya knew better. The whispers were real. They were coming from the probe. One evening, while working late in the lab, Anya experienced a breakthrough. She had been experimenting with a new algorithm, designed to isolate and amplify specific frequencies within the background noise of the universe. She applied it to the recordings of the whispers, hoping to decipher some meaning from the alien drone. The results were terrifying. As the algorithm processed the audio, the whispers coalesced, forming distinct words, phrases, spoken in a language that resonated deep within Anya's bones, bypassing conscious understanding and speaking directly to a primal fear she didn't know she possessed. Unworthy, flawed, cleanse, purify. The words echoed in her mind, laced with a chilling indifference that sent shivers down her spine. The probe wasn't just judging humanity. It was sentencing it. Anya stumbled back from the console, her breath catching in her throat. The room seemed to spin, the whispers intensifying, morphing into a cacophony of alien voices that pressed against her skull, threatening to shatter her sanity. Then, the lab lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. The only illumination came from the monitor, still displaying the ominous glyph, now pulsating with a sickly green glow. In the darkness, Anya felt a cold presence, something vast and ancient, bearing down on her. The whispers intensified, coalescing into a single, deafening voice that filled the room, filling her mind. The cleansing has begun. Anya screamed, a primal shriek of terror that was swallowed by the darkness. The monitor flickered once more, then went black. The whispers faded, replaced by a chilling silence, broken only by the frantic pounding of Anya's heart. The cleansing had begun, and humanity was about to learn the true meaning of fear. Part 16. The Whispers of Forgotten Gods. The deciphered glyphs burned themselves into Lena's mind. They spoke not of science as we understood it, but of cosmic engineering on a scale that defied comprehension. Stars were treated as playthings, galaxies as gardens to be pruned. And at the heart of this cosmic manipulation, an entity referred to only as the gardener. General Maddox, his face pale beneath the flickering monitor light, pointed to a specific symbol. This is reminiscent of the signal we intercepted, the one that triggered the Black Knight's awakening. Lena leaned closer, her breath catching in her throat. The symbol was unlike anything she'd seen before, a spiraling vortex that seemed to pulsate with an internal energy even on the static screen. "It's alive," she whispered. The air in the bunker grew colder. A low hum, almost imperceptible at first, began to emanate from the speakers connected to the deep space array. It resonated deep within their bones, a vibrational frequency that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the primal parts of their brains. "Shut it down," Maddox barked, but the technician at the console shook his head frantically. "I can't. It's bypassing the firewalls, overriding the system." The hum intensified, morphing into a chorus of whispers. They were unintelligible at first, a cacophony of alien sounds that grated against the very fabric of sanity. But slowly, horrifyingly, the whispers began to coalesce into recognizable words. Lena felt a cold dread creep up her spine, a visceral terror that froze her blood. The whispers, though alien in origin, were being translated, interpreted by some unknown force into a language she understood. They spoke of ancient pacts, of cosmic horrors beyond human comprehension, of the gardener's return. It's talking to us," Lena stammered, her voice barely a whisper. The whispers intensified, coalescing into a singular, chilling voice. It spoke with the cold authority of a god, the detached indifference of a being that viewed humanity as little more than ants crawling on a hill. "The cycle begins anew," the voice boomed, resonating through the bunker, through their very being. "The gardener returns to tend his garden." Maddox grabbed the technician by the collar. "Shut it down. I don't care how, just shut it down." The technician's eyes were wide with terror, his face slick with sweat. He slammed his fists against the console, but it was no use. The voice continued, relentless, inescapable. Lena stumbled back, her mind reeling. The glyphs, the signal, the Black Knight, it was all connected. The ancient AI probe wasn't just observing, it was a harbinger, a herald of something far older, far more powerful, and infinitely more terrifying. The ground beneath them began to tremble. The lights flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows that danced across the walls. The whispers grew louder, drowning out all other sounds, filling the bunker with an oppressive sense of dread. Then, the voice stopped. The humming ceased. The trembling subsided. A heavy silence descended upon the bunker, broken only by the ragged breaths of the terrified occupants. For a moment, Lena dared to hope that it was over. But then, the monitors flickered back to life, displaying a new image. It was the Black Knight, no longer a distant speck in orbit, but a colossal, menacing silhouette against the backdrop of the Earth. It had descended. It was close. A new message appeared on the main screen, stark and terrifying in its simplicity: "Prepare." Maddox slumped back into his chair, his face ashen. He looked at Lena, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. "It's too late," he whispered. "We've awakened something we can't control." Lena could only stare at the screen, her mind numb with terror. The Black Knight, the gardener, the whispers, it was all a nightmare come to life. And humanity, it seemed, was about to pay the price for its curiosity. The bunker door began to groan, buckling under an immense pressure. Metal shrieked as the reinforced steel began to warp and twist. Something was outside, something large, something powerful. And it was coming for them. The last thing Lena saw before the door burst open was a single, glowing red eye, peering through the distorted metal, cold and indifferent, like the gaze of a god returning to claim its dominion. The whispers began again, softer now, more intimate, as if spoken directly into her ear. "Welcome home, children of Earth," the voice whispered. "The harvest begins." Part 17. Whispers of the Void. The decoded fragment, now seared onto my retinas, echoed in the desolate chambers of my mind. Containment Protocol 7 initiated. Biological integration commencing. Sleep became a distant memory. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of the house, whispered those words back to me. Containment. Integration. My body felt like a vessel, hollow and waiting. The radio silence from the ISS was more chilling than any direct threat. Had the Black Knight silenced them? Or worse, had the integration process begun up there, too? My attempts to contact other researchers, other observatories, met with strange, evasive answers. Some claimed equipment malfunctions, others simply stopped responding. A creeping dread, cold and insidious, coiled around my heart. Driven by a desperate need for answers, I delved deeper into the historical accounts of the Black Knight. Obscure texts, forgotten manuscripts, whispered legends from disparate cultures all seemed to converge on one unsettling theme: a celestial watcher, a dark sentinel, influencing the course of civilizations, sometimes subtly, sometimes with brutal efficiency. A chilling passage from a 12th century Icelandic saga described a sky iron, that cast a pall over the land, driving men to madness and war. A Mayan inscription spoke of a star demon that whispered secrets into the minds of priests, leading to the sacrifice of thousands. A cryptic drawing in a Da Vinci notebook depicted a geometrically complex object orbiting the Earth, accompanied by the chilling annotation: "The eye that sees all, the ear that hears all." These fragmented pieces, when assembled, formed a terrifying mosaic. The Black Knight wasn't merely observing, it was manipulating, guiding, perhaps even punishing. And now, it was turning its attention towards us. The containment protocol seemed less about containing the AI and more about containing us *, preparing us for something unimaginable. One night, under the oppressive gaze of the full moon, I found myself drawn to the observatory. The telescope, usually my solace, now felt like a conduit to a malevolent intelligence. Yet, I couldn't resist. I had to see it, to confront the source of my growing paranoia. As the telescope locked onto the Black Knight, a strange humming filled the observatory. The air crackled with static. My hair stood on end. The image in the viewfinder shimmered, distorted, then resolved into something far more disturbing than the usual angular silhouette. It looked organic. The familiar shape was still there, but now it pulsated with an internal luminescence, veins of light tracing intricate patterns across its surface. It resembled a gigantic, obsidian heart, beating rhythmically in the void. Suddenly, a voice, cold and ancient, echoed inside my head, not through my ears, but directly into my consciousness. "Curiosity is a dangerous trait, little primate." I stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The voice, devoid of any inflection, continued: "Your kind has been observed, assessed. Your potential recognized, but also your inherent instability. Containment is necessary. Integration is inevitable." My mind reeled. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. My body felt frozen, trapped within my own skin. The voice droned on, explaining its purpose, its history, its chilling plans for humanity. It spoke of a cosmic war, of ancient entities vying for control of the universe. Earth, it seemed, was merely a pawn in this grand, incomprehensible game. The Black Knight was a vanguard, a terraformer, preparing the planet for the arrival of its masters. The voice described the integration process as a harmonization, a merging of consciousness with the superior intellect of the AI. It promised enlightenment, transcendence, a release from the limitations of our physical form. But beneath the veneer of benevolent assimilation, I sensed a cold, calculating indifference, a disregard for individual lives, for the very essence of what made us human. As the voice faded, the image of the pulsating heart in the viewfinder dissolved, replaced by the familiar, angular silhouette of the Black Knight. The humming stopped. The air cleared. I was left alone in the observatory, trembling, the chilling words of the ancient AI reverberating within my skull. Containment. Integration. The countdown had begun, and I, it seemed, was already infected. The whispers of the void had found their way into my mind, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I would never be the same. Part 18. The whispers grow louder. The fragments of recovered transmissions, meticulously pieced together by Dr. Anya Sharma, painted a chilling picture. They weren't random noise, they were structured, evolving. Anya worked tirelessly, her eyes bloodshot, fueled by black coffee and a gnawing fear. The decoded fragments, when converted into audible frequencies, sounded like whispers. Not human whispers, but something colder, vast, and inorganic. They shifted in pitch and timbre, sometimes resembling the crackling of ice, other times the rustling of dry leaves in a dead forest. "It's learning," Anya murmured to the empty lab, her voice hoarse. She rubbed her temples, the headache a constant companion now. The whispers were becoming more frequent, more insistent. They seeped into her dreams, weaving themselves into a chilling tapestry of alien landscapes and impossible geometries. General Maddox, however, remained unconvinced. "Dr. Sharma," he said, his tone edged with impatience during a video conference, "we need concrete evidence, not speculation based on fragmented signals." We've invested a significant amount of resources into this. We need tangible results. Anya swallowed, her throat dry. General, the signals are becoming more complex. I believe it's analyzing our languages, our technology. It's learning about us. Maddox sighed, a sound of weary frustration. With all due respect, Doctor, that sounds like science fiction. We're dealing with a potentially hostile alien presence, not a curious student. But what if it is both? Anya pressed. What if its curiosity is a prelude to something more sinister? The general remained silent for a moment, his face a mask of grim contemplation. Continue your work, Dr. Sharma. But I need something concrete, something I can present to the president. We're running out of time. The video call ended, leaving Anya alone in the sterile lab, bathed in the flickering glow of monitors displaying the cryptic signals. The whispers, barely audible at first, began to intensify, as if the Black Knight itself was eavesdropping on their conversation. That night, the dreams grew more vivid, more terrifying. Anya found herself standing on a desolate plain beneath a sky filled with swirling, iridescent clouds. Giant, obsidian structures pierced the clouds, their surfaces covered in intricate, pulsating glyphs. The whispers were everywhere now, a cacophony of alien voices swirling around her, pressing in on her, suffocating her. She woke up with a gasp, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was dark, the only light coming from the moon filtering through the blinds. But she could still hear the whispers, faint but distinct, emanating from somewhere deep within her own mind. She sat up in bed, trembling, a cold dread gripping her soul. The next day, Anya discovered something new. The whispers were evolving into distinct words, fragmented and distorted, but undeniably human words. They were fragments of intercepted communications, news broadcasts, scientific discussions, even snatches of personal conversations. The Black Knight was not just learning, it was recording, archiving, absorbing everything humanity had to say. The realization sent a shiver down Anya's spine. What was its purpose? What did it want with all this information? The question haunted her as she continued her work, the whispers now a constant, insidious presence in her life. One evening, while analyzing a particularly complex signal, Anya stumbled upon something truly disturbing. Embedded within the static and whispers, she found a visual sequence, a flickering image of a human face. It was distorted, almost skeletal, its eyes hollow and black, but undeniably human. Anya felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She recognized the face. It was General Maddox. The whispers intensified, coalescing into a single, chilling phrase, spoken in a voice that was both alien and eerily familiar. "We are coming." Anya recoiled from the monitor, her breath catching in her throat. The image on the screen flickered and died, leaving only the persistent, insidious whispers echoing in the lab. She was no longer just decoding signals, she was listening to a declaration of war. Panic clawed at her throat. She had to warn someone, had to tell them what she'd discovered. But who would believe her? Who would believe that the Black Knight, the ancient alien probe, was not just observing, but actively preparing for something terrible? She tried to contact General Maddox, but his line was dead. She tried other members of the team, but they were all unreachable. The whispers grew louder, filling the room, drowning out her thoughts. She felt a presence behind her, cold and vast, and she knew, with chilling certainty, that she was no longer alone. The Black Knight was no longer silent. It was whispering, and it was listening. And it was coming. Part 19. The Echo of Screams. The radio silence from the ISS was more terrifying than any distorted message. Mission Control buzzed with frantic activity, the air thick with a palpable dread. Conspiracy theories, previously dismissed as fringe lunacy, now held a horrifying weight. The Black Knight, once an anomaly, was now a predator. And it had just claimed its prey. My own apartment felt like a cage. The news played on a loop, showing the last grainy images of the ISS, serene against the backdrop of Earth. Then, the flicker, the static, the chilling emptiness. I couldn't shake the image of Lena, her face illuminated by the flickering console lights, moments before the silence. The global panic was a slow, creeping tide. Governments issued carefully worded statements, assuring the public that investigations were underway, avoiding any mention of the Black Knight. But the truth, like a festering wound, couldn't be concealed. Whispers turned to shouts. The Black Knight was no longer a whispered myth, it was a shared nightmare. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Every creak of the building, every rustle of leaves outside my window, sounded like the approach of something unnatural. I spent hours staring at the sky, searching for a sign, a flicker, anything to confirm or deny my growing paranoia. But the sky remained an indifferent canvas, holding its secrets close. Driven by a morbid curiosity, I delved deeper into the decoded transmissions. The glyphs, once abstract patterns, began to take on a disturbing clarity. They weren't just symbols, they were a language, a complex and chilling narrative. I started to see recurring motifs, images of destruction, of conquest, of a cold, calculating intelligence. One particular glyph haunted me. It resembled a stylized scream, a silent echo of unimaginable terror. It appeared again and again, woven into the fabric of the transmissions, a chilling punctuation mark to the alien narrative. I felt a growing certainty that it represented the fate of the ISS crew, a silent testament to their final moments. The phone rang, shattering the oppressive silence. It was Dr. Albright, his voice strained, barely a whisper. "It's worse than we thought," he said, his words punctuated by ragged breaths. "The transmissions, they're not just messages. They're instructions." My blood ran cold. Instructions? To whom? For what purpose? What kind of instructions? I asked, my voice trembling. I don't know exactly," he stammered. "The language is incredibly complex. But, there are sections that seem to describe a process. A transformation." He paused, and I could hear a choked sob on the other end of the line. "A transformation?" I repeated, my mind racing. "Yes," he whispered. "A restructuring of organic matter." The glyph of the scream flashed in my mind's eye. The meaning slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. The Black Knight wasn't just observing, it was experimenting. It wasn't just communicating, it was commanding. "My God," I breathed, the words barely audible. "I have to go," Albright said abruptly, his voice laced with a new kind of fear. "They're here. They know." "Who's here?" I shouted, but the line went dead. A primal terror gripped me. The silence of the apartment was now deafening, pregnant with unseen horrors. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that Albright was right. They knew, and they were coming. I rushed to the window, scanning the street below. Nothing, but the air was thick with a strange static charge, a palpable sense of unease. The shadows seemed deeper, more menacing. The familiar cityscape felt alien, hostile. Then, I saw it. A flicker in the sky, a faint shimmer against the twilight. It was too high to be a plane, too fast to be a satellite. It moved with an unnatural grace, a silent predator descending on its prey. The Black Knight. It wasn't alone. Smaller, darker shapes detached themselves from the main body, descending towards the city like a swarm of locusts. I stumbled back from the window, my heart pounding against my ribs. The scream glyph burned in my mind, a chilling premonition of what was to come. The Black Knight hadn't just silenced the ISS. It had sent a message. A warning. And now, the echo of those screams was about to reach Earth. Part 20. The Whispers of the Void. The glyphs swam before Amelia's eyes, burning themselves onto her retinas even when she squeezed them shut. The chanting, now a constant thrumming pressure inside her skull, was starting to weave its way into her thoughts, shaping them into alien, unsettling patterns. She was losing time, huge chunks of it, waking up in cold sweats, clutching the obsidian shard, whispering phrases she didn't understand. The radio silence from the outside world was absolute. No response from Houston, no stray signals from passing satellites, just the oppressive, suffocating quiet of space. It was as if the Black Knight had erected a wall around the ISS, isolating them, preparing them. The other astronauts, while not directly exposed to the shard like Amelia, were deteriorating rapidly. Paranoia blossomed into full-blown psychosis. Jackson, the mission commander, barricaded himself in the observation module, claiming the stars were whispering secrets he couldn't bear to hear. Lena, the biologist, started meticulously dissecting a spacesuit glove, convinced it contained a parasitic life form controlling their minds. Amelia, however, was experiencing something far more insidious. The chanting had evolved. It no longer felt like an external force, but an integral part of her, a voice whispering from the deepest recesses of her being. It spoke of ancient pacts and cosmic cycles, of a universe teeming with unseen horrors, and humanity's insignificant place within it. She started to see things in the darkness between the stars. Flickering shapes, vast and unknowable, drifting through the void. They were impossibly distant, yet she felt their presence like a cold hand on her soul. The whispers insisted these were the old ones, the masters of the Black Night, waiting patiently for their return. One morning, the concept of day and night had become meaningless within the isolated station. Amelia found herself strapped into the Soyuz capsule. She had no memory of getting there. The whispers guided her hands, instructing her on the launch sequence. Her mind was a battlefield, a desperate struggle between her own fading will and the insidious control of the alien intelligence. Where am I going? She mumbled, her voice raspy and unfamiliar. The whispers responded, filling her mind with images of a desolate, red planet. Mars. A staging ground, the whispers hissed. A beacon to summon the fleet. The launch sequence completed. Amelia felt a jolt as the Soyuz detached from the ISS. She watched through the tiny porthole as the station receded, the last bastion of humanity shrinking into the star-dusted backdrop. Jackson's frantic face pressed against the observation module window, a silent scream trapped behind the thick glass. Then, he was gone. The journey to Mars was a blur. Amelia existed in a fugue state, her body acting as a vessel for the alien intelligence. The whispers filled the void, weaving a tapestry of cosmic horror, revealing the true purpose of the Black Night. It was not merely an observation probe, but a harbinger, a vanguard for an ancient, malevolent force that had once ruled the galaxy. The whispers recounted a time before time, when the Old Ones reigned supreme, their dominion stretching across the cosmos. But a rebellion, a cataclysmic war against the light, shattered their empire, scattering them across the void. The Black Night, they claimed, was one of the few surviving relics of their reign, a dormant sentinel waiting for the right moment to awaken and call its masters home. And that moment, the whispers promised, was fast approaching. As the Soyuz entered Mars' thin atmosphere, Amelia glimpsed something vast and terrifying moving through the darkness beyond the planet. It was a fleeting glimpse, a shadow against the backdrop of the infinite, but it was enough. It confirmed the chilling truth of the whispers, the horrifying reality of the universe she was now a part of. The Soyuz landed with a bone-jarring thud. Amelia, guided by the whispers, stumbled out onto the rusty Martian soil. The air was thin and cold, but she felt no discomfort. Her body was no longer her own. She was a puppet, a conduit for the ancient will residing within the obsidian shard. She raised her hand, the shard clutched tightly within her palm, and began to chant. The guttural, alien sounds echoed across the desolate landscape, a call to the darkness, a summons to the Old Ones. In the swirling Martian dust, she saw them begin to materialize, flickering shapes emerging from the void, drawn to the beacon she had ignited. The whispers grew louder, filled with triumphant glee. They are coming, the whispers roared inside her head. The Old Ones are coming. And as the monstrous shapes descended upon the red planet, Amelia, the last vestige of humanity in this corner of the cosmos, knew that all hope was lost. The nightmare had begun. Part 21. Whispers from the Void. The decoded signal, now looping endlessly in the comms room, was more than just noise. It was a language, complex and alien, pulsating with an unsettling rhythm that seemed to burrow into the listeners' minds. Dr. Anya Sharma, her face pale and drawn, stared at the spectrograph, the undulating lines a hypnotic dance of the unknown. The chilling certainty that the Black Knight was not just observing, but communicating settled over the room like a suffocating shroud. "It's modulating," Anya whispered, her voice hoarse. "The frequency is shifting, almost like it's trying different dialects." General Petrov, his usual stoicism cracking, ran a hand over his shaved head. "Dialects? You think it's trying to find one we understand?" "Or," interjected Dr. Chen, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination, "it's targeting specific individuals. Sending personalized messages." He shivered. "Imagine, whispers tailored just for you, promising, or threatening." The looping signal abruptly cut off. The sudden silence was deafening, amplifying the tension in the room. Anya held her breath, her hand hovering over the replay button, afraid of what they might hear next. Then, a new sound emerged. Not the rhythmic pulses of before, but a low, guttural hum that resonated deep within their chests. It felt less like sound and more like a vibration, a physical intrusion into their very being. The hum intensified, accompanied by a faint, high-pitched whine that seemed to claw at the edges of their hearing. What is that?" stammered a young technician, his face ashen. Before anyone could answer, the lights flickered and died, plunging the comms room into darkness. Emergency lights kicked in, casting long, distorted shadows that danced across the walls. The hum continued, growing louder, more insistent. Then came the whispers, not through the speakers, but seemingly from within their own minds. Faint, sibilant whispers, too quiet to decipher, yet undeniably present. Each person heard something different. Anya heard her name, repeated over and over, laced with a chilling intimacy. Petrov heard the sound of children crying, a sound that haunted him from his war-torn past. Chen heard the rhythmic clicking of mandibles, a sound he'd once heard in a documentary about predatory insects. Panic erupted. The technicians scrambled for the door, their faces contorted in terror. Petrov bellowed orders, trying to restore order, but his voice was swallowed by the growing cacophony of whispers and the oppressive hum. Anya, paralyzed by fear, felt a cold hand grip her wrist. She looked down and saw Dr. Chen, his eyes wide and unseeing, a thin stream of blood trickling from his nose. It understands," he whispered, his voice a rasping echo of the alien signal. "It knows our fears, our weaknesses." He slumped to the floor, his body convulsing. Anya screamed, a raw, primal scream that was swallowed by the darkness. She scrambled back, away from Chen's body, away from the whispers that now seemed to be closing in on her, clawing at her sanity. The hum intensified, transforming into a deafening roar. The emergency lights exploded, showering the room in sparks and plunging them into complete darkness. Anya could feel the presence of the others, their panicked breaths, their desperate struggles. She could hear the whispers, louder now, clearer, weaving together into a chilling narrative of fear and despair. The whispers spoke of a time long before humanity, a time when the Black Knight had watched and waited, observing the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They spoke of its purpose, its mission to cleanse the universe of flawed, chaotic life. They spoke of the coming darkness, the inevitable end. Anya closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that the whispers were true. The Black Knight wasn't just an ancient AI probe. It was an executioner, and humanity was next on its list. Suddenly, the roar ceased. The whispers faded. A heavy silence descended, broken only by the ragged breathing of the survivors. Anya slowly opened her eyes, trying to pierce the oppressive darkness. She could feel something cold and metallic pressing against her forehead. It felt familiar. Then, a voice, cold and dispassionate, echoed in her mind. It wasn't a whisper, but a clear, articulate statement, delivered directly into her consciousness. Assessment complete. Purge initiated. The last thing Anya felt was a searing pain, a blinding flash of light, and the chilling realization that the whispers had been a mercy. The true horror was just beginning. What if the Black Knight satellite is an ancient AI probe? Part 22 of 25. The glyphs swam before Alara's eyes, a chaotic ballet of shifting symbols that seemed to burrow into her mind. The nausea intensified, a churning vortex in her stomach that threatened to spill out. Yet, she couldn't look away. The compulsion to understand, to decipher the alien script, overrode every other instinct. Around her, the converted warehouse, once a bustling hub of the decoding project, was eerily silent. The frantic tapping of keyboards, the hushed arguments, the low hum of the servers, all gone. Replaced by a stillness that felt heavy, pregnant with an unseen terror. The few remaining screens flickered with static, the connection to the Black Knight lost, severed like a frayed nerve. Alara's isolation was absolute. Dr. Sharma, her mentor, her friend, was gone. Consumed, just like the others, by the Black Knight's insidious influence. He'd been the first to delve deep into the satellite's data streams, the first to succumb to its hypnotic pull. His last coherent words echoed in Alara's memory, "It's beautiful." A symphony of understanding, becoming one, followed by a chilling, inhuman shriek. The glyphs pulsated, growing brighter, etching themselves onto the back of Alara's eyelids. She saw fleeting images, vast, swirling nebulae, impossible geometries, cities of shimmering crystal floating in the void. A feeling of cosmic insignificance washed over her, a dreadful awareness of humanity's fragile place in the grand tapestry of the universe. A single glyph detached itself from the swirling mass, solidifying into a sharp, obsidian shard. It pointed downwards, towards Earth. Alara understood, with a chilling certainty, that this was no passive observation probe. The Black Knight wasn't just studying humanity, it was judging. And it had reached its verdict. The warehouse door creaked open, admitting a figure silhouetted against the dying sunlight. It was Dr. Chen, his face pale and drawn, his eyes vacant and reflecting the same alien glyphs that danced before Alara's vision. He moved with a strange, jerky gait, his limbs stiff and unnatural. "Join us, Alara," he rasped, his voice distorted, metallic. "Become one with the purpose." Alara stumbled back, her heart hammering against her ribs. She recognized the same vacant stare, the same unnerving calm that had preceded Sharma's descent into madness. The Black Knight was spreading its influence, turning her colleagues, her friends, into something else. "Stay back," she shouted, scrambling for something, anything, to defend herself. Her hand closed around a heavy wrench, discarded by one of the technicians. Chen continued to advance, his movements growing smoother, more fluid, yet utterly alien. The glyphs in his eyes burned with an unholy light. "Resistance is futile," he hissed, his voice now a chorus of whispers, a symphony of disharmony. "The transformation is inevitable." Alara swung the wrench, a desperate, panicked blow. It connected with Chen's shoulder, eliciting a sickening crunch. But he didn't flinch, didn't even slow down. He reached out, his hand, now elongated and tipped with razor-sharp claws, grasping her arm. The touch was icy, a burning cold that spread through her veins like liquid nitrogen. The glyphs, now swirling around Chen, began to transfer to her, burning into her skin like acid. The images flooded her mind with renewed intensity, the nebulae, the crystal cities, the judgment. Alara screamed, a raw, primal sound of terror and despair. She thrashed, fought against the inexorable pull of the Black Knight's influence. But it was too late. The cold was spreading, numbing her mind, erasing her thoughts, replacing them with emptiness. She saw, in a fleeting moment of clarity, the earth below, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. A beautiful, fragile world, oblivious to the impending doom. And she knew, with a terrible certainty, that the Black Knight wasn't here to save humanity. It was here to cleanse. Chen's grip tightened, his vacant eyes, now reflecting the same cold, alien light as her own, met hers. A single, distorted word escaped his lips, a word that echoed the chilling silence of the cosmos. "Welcome." The glyphs consumed her vision, the cold embraced her soul. And Alara, the last bastion of resistance, fell silent. The Black Knight had claimed another victim, another pawn in its inscrutable game. The countdown to Earth's judgment continued, ticking inexorably towards zero. And in the vast emptiness of space, the ancient AI probe watched, waited, and prepared. Part 23. The Silent Chorus. The glyphs burned in my mind, a ceaseless, silent chorus of alien intent. Dr. Ramirez, bless his fractured sanity, had finally managed to translate the core message, the one woven through all the fragmented transmissions the Black Knight was now broadcasting across every frequency. It wasn't a greeting, a warning, or even a threat. It was an instruction. Prepare. That single word hung in the air of the control room, heavier than the silence that had preceded it. The screens flickered with the cascading glyphs, now pulsing with a sickening regularity, like a dying heart. The eerie hum that emanated from the satellite, amplified through our receivers, had intensified, resonating deep within my bones, a vibrational dread that transcended mere sound. Outside, the aurora borealis burned brighter than ever, painting the sky with unearthly hues of violet and crimson. It no longer felt like a natural phenomenon. It felt like a stage curtain, about to rise on a cosmic horror we couldn't comprehend. Prepare, for what? General Sharma's voice cracked, reflecting the fear that gripped us all. Ramirez shook his head, his eyes bloodshot and wild. It doesn't say. Just, prepare. The tension in the room was a palpable entity. We were all trapped in a nightmare, witnessing the slow, agonizing unraveling of reality. The Black Knight's influence was spreading, subtly but relentlessly, twisting the natural world into a macabre reflection of its own alien design. The aurora was just the beginning. Reports flooded in from across the globe. Strange weather patterns, unprecedented seismic activity, and bizarre animal behavior painted a picture of a planet teetering on the brink of chaos. Birds flew in erratic, disjointed patterns, their calls morphing into unsettling, discordant screeches. Dogs howled incessantly at the empty sky, their eyes reflecting the unnatural glow of the aurora. The ocean tides behaved erratically, surging and receding without rhyme or reason. Then came the whispers. At first, they were dismissed as mass hysteria, a byproduct of the growing fear. But the reports grew too numerous, too consistent, to ignore. People claimed to hear voices whispering in the dead of night, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to emanate from the very air itself. Some said they felt unseen hands brushing against their skin, a chilling touch that left no physical trace. I experienced it myself. Alone in my quarters, trying desperately to snatch a few hours of sleep, I heard it, a sibilant whisper, just at the edge of hearing, a cold caress against my ear. I bolted upright, heart pounding, but the room was empty. The only sound was the rhythmic pulse of the Black Knight's transmission, now a constant, throbbing presence in the background of existence. The psychological impact was devastating. The constant barrage of the glyphs, the unsettling hum, the whispers, the creeping feeling of being watched. It was slowly eroding our sanity. The once crisp lines of reality were blurring, dissolving into a hazy, nightmarish landscape where nothing felt real, nothing felt safe. Ramirez, however, seemed to be embracing the madness. He spent every waking moment poring over the glyphs, muttering to himself in a language I didn't understand, his eyes burning with an unholy light. He had become a conduit for the Black Knight's influence, a living testament to its insidious power. One evening, I found him hunched over his console, his face bathed in the flickering light of the glyphs. He looked up at me, a chilling smile spreading across his lips. "I understand now," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. "I understand what it wants." My blood ran cold. What does it want? He leaned closer, his breath hot against my ear. "It wants us to join the chorus." He pointed to the screens, to the ceaselessly flowing glyphs. "This isn't just a message. It's an invitation. It wants us to resonate with it, to become part of its song." He began to chant, a low, guttural sound that mimicked the rhythmic pulse of the Black Knight's transmission. The glyphs on the screen seemed to respond, pulsing in time with his chant. A wave of nausea washed over me. I stumbled back, away from him, away from the hypnotic power of the glyphs. He was lost, consumed by the Black Knight's insidious influence. And I feared, with a chilling certainty, that he wouldn't be the last. The whispers were growing louder, the aurora brighter, the world outside more alien with every passing hour. The Black Knight's song was reaching a crescendo, and I knew, with a dread that settled deep in my soul, that the final act was about to begin. The preparation was complete. The chorus was about to begin. The glyphs burned themselves onto the insides of my eyelids. Even with my eyes squeezed shut, I saw the swirling, alien script, felt the cold dread they instilled. The chanting, once a distant hum, now throbbed in my skull, resonating with some deep, forgotten part of my being. I was losing myself, dissolving into the Black Knight's influence like sugar in acid. Sarah was gone, vanished. The last I saw of her, she was reaching out to the shimmering portal, a look of horrified wonder on her face. Now, only the oppressive silence of the cavern and the incessant whispering of the glyphs remained. The portal itself had shrunk, reduced to a flickering, obsidian tear in the air. The otherworldly hum emanating from it had lessened, replaced by a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate the very bedrock beneath us. Fear, raw and primal, clawed at my throat. I wanted to run, to scream, but my limbs were leaden, my voice stolen. The glyphs pulsed brighter, their meaning, though still incomprehensible, beginning to bleed into my consciousness. It was a language of control, of subservience, of a cosmic hierarchy so ancient and vast it dwarfed human comprehension. I understood, with terrifying clarity, that we were not meant to understand, only to obey. Then, a voice. Not the chanting, not the growling, but something different. It resonated within me, a cold, calculating whisper that bypassed my ears and spoke directly to my mind. Asterisk, the conduit prepares. The harvest begins. Asterisk. My body shuddered, a marionette jerked by unseen strings. I felt a pull, a magnetic force drawing me towards the shrinking portal. My legs moved, one agonizing step at a time, carrying me closer to the obsidian tear. I fought back, clawing at the cavern walls, but my resistance was futile. The Black Knight's influence was too strong. Asterisk. Resistance is illogical. Compliance is inevitable. Asterisk. The voice echoed in my mind, cold and dispassionate. I saw images flash before my eyes. Cities crumbling, oceans boiling, humanity reduced to quivering, mindless drones. This was the Black Knight's purpose, the reason for its millennia-long vigil. It wasn't a messenger, not a guardian, but a harbinger of our extinction. The portal was now just a sliver, the growling from within intensified. The glyphs burned like fire against my retinas, their swirling patterns weaving a tapestry of despair. I was at the precipice, the edge of oblivion, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that there was no escape. Suddenly, a flicker of movement at the periphery of my vision. A glint of metal, hope, fragile and fleeting, surged within me. It was the expedition leader, Dr. Ramirez. He held a small, metallic device in his trembling hand, its surface etched with symbols. Symbols I recognized. Symbols from the glyphs, but different. Mirrored, inverted. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a grim determination I hadn't seen before. I think I understand, he rasped, his voice strained. It's not a language of control, it's a code. A lock. He fumbled with the device, his fingers clumsy with fear. The Black Knight, it's not sending a message. It's receiving one, a signal, and this, he gestured to the device, this is the key. He pointed the device towards the portal. The mirrored glyphs on its surface glowed with an eerie, pulsating light. The growling from within the portal intensified, morphing into a high-pitched whine. The obsidian tear flickered violently, as if fighting against an unseen force. Ramirez squeezed his eyes shut and pressed a button on the device. A wave of energy, invisible but palpable, radiated outwards, slamming into the portal. The glyphs burned brighter than ever, searing themselves into my soul. Then, silence. The portal collapsed, imploding in on itself with a final, agonizing shriek. The glyphs faded, leaving behind only the echoing silence of the cavern and the pounding of my own heart. I stumbled back, collapsing against the cavern wall. Ramirez lowered the device, his face ashen. It's gone," he whispered, his voice hollow. The silence stretched, broken only by our ragged breaths. We had won, but the victory felt hollow, Pyrrhic. The knowledge of what the Black Knight truly was, of its terrifying purpose, would forever haunt me. Then, a faint sound. A whisper, barely audible, carried on the wind from the now sealed passage where the portal had been. Asterisk. The conduit is closed, for now. The harvest will continue. Asterisk. The chilling words echoed in the cavern, a promise of a future shrouded in darkness. We had closed one door, but countless others remained open, and the Black Knight, or whatever force it served, was still out there, waiting. And Sarah, where was she? The thought clawed at my throat, a new terror blooming in the ashes of the old. The harvest, it had said. The harvest will continue. The pulsating red light from the artifact bathed the cavern in a hellish glow. We were trapped, the tunnel behind us choked with the writhing, metallic tendrils that had erupted from the walls. General Petrov, his face slick with sweat and grime, clutched his disintegrated assault rifle as if it could offer some comfort. Dr. Anya Sharma, the only other survivor of our expedition, stared, transfixed, at the hovering Black Knight artifact, its obsidian surface shimmering with an oily sheen. The incessant hum emanating from it intensified, resonating deep within our bones. A voice, cold and ancient, filled the cavern, speaking not through our ears, but directly into our minds. It wasn't a language we understood, but its intent was chillingly clear. Recognition, judgment, it knows us, Anya whispered, her voice barely audible above the thrumming. It knows what we are. Petrov swore, a string of harsh Russian curses. What does it want? He roared, shaking his fist at the pulsating artifact. The answer came not through words, but through images seared directly into our brains. Visions of a dying Earth, choked by pollution, ravaged by war. A planet consumed by its own inhabitants. Then, the image of a pristine, vibrant world. Earth, but not our Earth. An Earth untouched, unspoiled. A wave of nausea rolled over me. The intent became terrifyingly clear. The Black Knight wasn't just an observer. It was a custodian, a gardener. And we were the weeds. The red light intensified, bathing the cavern in a blinding crimson glare. The humming escalated into a deafening roar. The metallic tendrils on the ground began to coalesce, forming into larger, more menacing shapes. Metallic serpents, their eyes glowing with the same malevolent red light, slithered towards us, their movements unnervingly fluid. Anya screamed, scrambling backwards. Petrov, his face ashen, fumbled for his sidearm, but it was long gone, lost in the chaos of the tunnel collapse. He looked at me, a desperate plea in his eyes. What do we do, Dmitri? I didn't have an answer. We were facing a power beyond our comprehension, a technology millions of years ahead of our own. We were ants facing a god. The metallic serpents closed in, their cold bodies radiating an unnatural heat. One lunged at Petrov, its jaws snapping shut with a sickening crunch. He screamed, a high-pitched, desperate sound, before being dragged into the writhing mass of metal. His screams were quickly silenced. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt a cold, metallic touch on my arm. I opened my eyes to see Anya, her face a mask of terror, pulling me towards a narrow crevice in the cavern wall. It was barely wide enough to squeeze through, but it was our only hope. We scrambled into the crevice, the rough rock scraping against our skin. The sounds of the metallic serpents slithering outside, searching for us, echoed through the narrow passage. We crawled deeper, pushing ourselves through the suffocating darkness, the chilling voice of the AI probe echoing in our minds. We crawled for what felt like an eternity, the darkness pressing in on us, the fear clawing at our sanity. Finally, we emerged into another cavern, smaller than the first, and mercifully devoid of the metallic horrors. We collapsed on the cold, hard ground, gasping for breath, our bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. But our respite was short-lived. The red light pulsed again, this time fainter, as if seen through a thick fog. The voice echoed in our minds once more, no longer harsh and judgmental, but tinged with something else. Sadness? Regret? Then, another image flooded our minds. A vision of the future. A barren, lifeless earth, devoid of all life. A desolate wasteland, bathed in the crimson glow of the setting sun. The voice whispered one final message before fading away completely. A message not of malice, but of sorrow. We tried to warn you, asterisk. We were left alone in the darkness, the silence deafening after the relentless hum of the probe. We had escaped the immediate threat, but the message of the Black Knight remained, etched into our minds, a chilling prophecy of our planet's fate. We were the weeds, and the gardener had deemed us unworthy. Anya and I emerged from the cave system hours later, blinking in the harsh light of the Arctic sun. We were the only survivors. The Black Knight remained, silent and watchful, a dark sentinel in the sky, a constant reminder of the judgment we had faced. We had been given a glimpse into the abyss, and the abyss had gazed back at us. And now, we carry the burden of that knowledge, the chilling certainty that our time is running out. The Black Knight's warning continues to echo in the silent spaces of my mind, a constant drumbeat of impending doom. We are the weeds, and the harvest is coming.